我明明就跟之前差不多。
Hello，
好哦，谢谢你，
晚上好，
谢谢大家说晚安，ありがとう，谢谢你哦。好，
大家晚上好。
我要今晚
哦，不是我的录吧，昨天的录吧可没有关掉。好了，第二版本。没有，我觉得太好听了。我刚被第二唱的，我的心揪揪的，我的心都揪起来了，太想哭了。对，太好听了，怎么会有这么好听的歌啊？叶子嘛，没有听过，但是真的好好听哦。笑死，被发现在第一台。奶哥安安，明天要跟奶哥他们玩恐怖游戏啊！啊！我的灵牙，我的灵牙。哦，谢谢史蒂华夫饼送出了20个内膜的会籍，请拿到内膜会籍的姐妹们，记得跟史蒂华夫饼お姉ちゃん。我今天说お姉ちゃん对吧？お姉ちゃん，是不是ありがとうね？谢谢啊，いらっしゃい。那你可以走第一个吗？我其实偷偷问了一下弟儿，他说那个游戏是要动脑袋的。如果让我走第一个的话，我们可能会变耐久台哦，你们确定吗？而且你们的耳膜可能会被我就是炸裂，直接就是炸裂。哦，小江所有给，嗨，纯阳那在啦，下俩多呢。那有什么问题？不要，你们很奇怪，为什么不好好保护你们的耳膜？好想听丽儿的台哦！这下一首要唱什么？等一下，ありがとう哦，啊，感觉很好听。我想要先跟今天朗读前，我想要先跟史大夫说。想要先跟我们春雨的板板，还有香香、昆布、海参他们说，龙板还有量产1号、2号板板，他们说没点到名的不好意思啊。我想要说全员，但我不知道我们全部有点到，就是应该有吧？对，看起来是应该有。先跟你们说这几天辛苦了，谢谢你们啦，你们真的很辛苦。我看你们在现场，你们拍的照片都有一种疲态的感觉。超级辛苦了，谢谢你们啦！要处理各种临时的那种现场状况，辛苦啦！ありがとうね，谢谢你们啦！我们谢谢之外，我们今天我们4颗汤圆还在凹板板请我们吃饭。其实本来是我们4个要去吃饭，那板板今天说我们要不要来开一次会，差不多要开一次会了。然后板板就这次问我们说要不要线下还是线上。我们说线下的话，我们正缺一个请客的人，我们正好缺一个请客的人呢。谢谢板板出现的真是时候，板板出现的很是时候。我的声音会太大吗？领欧的欢迎做摩多伊拉塞，ありがとうね。板板被我们凹了一顿 ，yes，nice。 太小吗？刚好，我自己听好了，等我一下。感觉刚好啊，刚刚应该是刚刚好，这样子，这样子，这样子，刚刚好。OK， 冬奥啊，水漏出来了。哎，我们背包水壶怪好。OK， 好。手手在我这边吹暖气。等一下，我把桌子弄湿了，等我一下。OK， 手手你要不要上来？你要不要来？等一下，你要不要上来？你要不要上来？你不在这位，你不在这位置，给你就躺这里好不好？给你躺这里，给你躺这里，然后妈妈在这边念，然后妈妈在这边念，你在这边，乖，好乖呀，好，晚一点再喂你吃那个喂你吃你最爱的那个乖，这个是书，这是妈妈要念给大家听的书，你看得懂吗？你看得不，你不要抓它，你看得懂吗？你看那么认真，好给你拍起来，你好可爱呀！不要咬它，这不好吃。我妈妈等一下给你吃更好吃的你乖乖可爱呀，你好可爱呀！好，我们要开始朗读了，再不朗读的话就念不完了。好，你挡住了，等一下。手手，你挡着呢。你干嘛？你有没有听到他呼噜声吗？你对着麦克风，你想说什么？乖，好，那我们要开始今天的朗读了。希望今天也可以带给大家一个放松的夜晚。你先放松，妈妈才能放松念。你不放松，妈妈就紧张。OK， 好。Okay. Chapter 5. Sorry. Chapter 5. The Avenging Angels. All night, their course lay through intricate defiles and over irregular, unrock-strewn paths. More than once, they lost their way. But Hope's intimate knowledge of the mountains enabled them to regain the track once more. When morning broke, a scene of marvelous, though savage beauty lay before them. In every direction, the great snow-capped peaks hemmed them in, peeping over each other's shoulders to the far horizon. So steep were the rocky banks on either side of them that the larch and the pine seemed to be suspended over their heads, and to need only a gust of wind to come hurtling down upon them. Nor was the fear entirely an illusion, for the barren valley was thickly strewn with trees and boulders, which had fallen in a similar manner. Even as they passed, a great rock came thundering down with a hoarse rattle which woke the echoes in the silent gorges and startled the weary horses into a gallop. as the sun rose slowly above the eastern horizon. The caps of the great mountains lit up one after the other, like lamps at a festival, until they were all ruddy and glowing. The magnificent spectacle cheered the hearts of the three fugitives and gave them fresh energy. At a wild torrent which swept out of a ravine, they called a halt and watered their horses, while they partook of a hasty breakfast. Lucy and her father would fain have rested longer, but Jefferson Hope was inexorable. "They'll be upon our track by this time," he said. "Everything depends upon our speed. Once safe in Carson, we may rest for the remainder of our lives." During the whole of that day, they struggled on through the defiles, and by evening, they calculated that they were more than 30 miles from their enemies. At night time, they chose the base of a beetling crag, where the rocks offered some protection from the chill wind, and there, huddled together for warmth, they enjoyed a few hours' sleep. Before daybreak, however, they were up and on their way once more. They had seen no signs of any pursuers, and Jefferson Hope began to think that they were fairly out of the reach of the terrible organization whose enmity they had incurred. He little knew how far that iron grasp could reach, or how soon it was to close upon them and crush them. About the middle of the second day of their flight, their scanty store of provisions began to run out. This gave the hunter little uneasiness, however, for there was game to be had among the mountains, and he had frequently before had to depend upon his rifle for the needs of life. Choosing a sheltered nook, he piled together a few dried branches and made a blazing fire, at which his companions might warm themselves, for they were now nearly 5,000 feet above the sea level, and the air was bitter and keen. Having tethered the horses and bid Lucy adieu, he threw his gun over his shoulder and set out in search of whatever chance might throw in his way. Looking back, he saw the old man and the young girl crouching over the blazing fire, while the three animals stood motionless in the background. Then the intervening rocks hid them from his view. He walked for a couple miles through one ravine after another without success, though from the marks upon the bark of the trees and other indications, he judged that there were numerous bears in the vicinity. At last, after 2 or 3 hours fruitless search, he was thinking of turning back in despair, when casting his eyes upwards, he saw a sight which sent a thrill of pleasure through his heart. On the edge of a jutting pinnacle, 300 or 400 feet above him, there stood a creature somewhat resembling a sheep in appearance, but armed with a pair of gigantic horns. The big horn, for so it is called, was acting, probably, as a guardian over a flock which were invincible to the hunter. But fortunately, it was heading in the opposite direction and had not perceived him. Lying on his face, he rested his rifle upon a rock and took a long and steady aim before drawing the trigger. The animal sprang into the air, tottered for a moment upon the edge of the precipice, and then came crashing down into the valley beneath. The creature was too unwieldy to lift, so the hunter contented himself with cutting away one haunch and part of the flank. With this trophy over his shoulder, he hastened to retrace his steps. For the evening was already drawing in. He had hardly started, however, before he realized the difficulty which faced him. In his eagerness, he had wandered far past the ravens which were known to him, and it was no easy matter to pick out the path which he had taken. The valley in which he found himself, divided and subdivided into many gorges, which were so like each other that it was impossible to distinguish one from the other. He followed one for a mile or more until he came to a mountain torrent which he was sure that he had never seen before. Convinced that he had taken the wrong turn, he tried another, but with the same result. Night was coming on rapidly, and it was almost dark before he at last found himself in a defile, which was familiar to him. Even then, it was no easy matter to keep to the right track, for the moon had not yet risen, and the high cliffs on either side made the obscurity more profound. Weighed down with his burden, and weary from his exertions, he stumbled along, keeping up his heart by the reflection that every step brought him nearer to Lucy, and that he carried with him enough to ensure them food for the remainder of their journey. he had now came to the mouth of the very defile in which he had left them. Even in the darkness, he could recognize the outline of the cliffs which bounded it. They must, he reflected, be awaiting him anxiously, for he had been absent nearly 5 hours. In the gladness of his heart, he put his hands to his mouth and made a grand ritual to a loud halloo as a signal that he was coming. He paused and listened for an answer. None came save his own cry, which clattered up the dreary, silent ravines, and was borne back to his ears in countless repetitions. Again he shouted, even louder than before, and again a whisper came back from the friends whom he had left such a short time ago. A vague, nameless dread came over him, and he hurried onward frantically, dropping the precious food in his agitation. When he turned the corner, he came full in sight of the spot where the fire had been lit. There was still a glowing pile of wood ashes there, but it had evidently not been tended since his departure. The same dead silence still reigned all round. With his fears all changed to convictions, he hurried on. There was no living creature near the remains of the fire. Animals, man, maiden, all were gone. It was only too clear that some sudden and terrible disaster had occurred during his absence. A disaster which had embraced them all, and yet had left no traces behind it. Bewildered and stunned by his blow, Jefferson Hope felt his head spin round, and had to lean upon his rifle to save himself from falling. He was essentially a man of action, however, and speedily recovered from his temporary impotence. Seizing a half-consumed piece of wood from a smouldering fire, he blew it into a flame, and proceeded with its help to examine the little camp. The ground was all stamped down by the feet of horses, showing that a large party of mounted men had overtaken the fugitives, and the direction of their tracks proved that they had afterwards turned back to Salt Lake City. Had they carried back both of his companions with them? Jefferson Hope had almost persuaded himself that they must have done so. when his eye fell upon an object which made every nerve of his body tingle within him. A little way on one side of the camp was a low-lying heap of reddish soil, which had assuredly not been there before. There was no mistaking it for anything but a newly dug grave. As the young hunter approached it, he perceived that a stick had been planted on it, with a sheet of paper stuck in a cleft fork of it. The inscription upon the paper was brief, but on the point. John Ferrier, formerly of Salt Lake City, died August 4th, 1860. The sturdy old man, whom he had left so short a time before, was gone. Then, and this was all his epitaph. Jefferson Hope looked wildly round to see if there was a second grave, but there was no sign of one. Lucy had been carried back by their terrible pursuers to fulfill her original destiny by becoming one of the harem of an elder son. As the young fellow realized the certainty of her fate, and his own powerlessness to prevent it, he wished that he too was lying with the old farmer in his last silent resting place. Again, however, his active spirit shook off the lethargy which springs from despair. If there was nothing else left to him, he could at least devote his life to revenge. With indomitable patience and perseverance, Jefferson Hope possessed also a power of sustained inventiveness, which he may have learned from the Indians amongst whom he had lived. As he stood by the desolate fire, he felt that the only one thing which could assuage his grief would be through incomplete retribution, brought by his own hand upon his enemies. His strong will and untiring energy should, he determined, be devoted to that one end. With a grim, white face, he retraced his steps to where he had dropped the food, and having stirred up the smoldering fire, he cooked enough to last him for a few days. This he made up into a bundle, and, tired as he was, he set himself to walk back through the mountains upon the track of the avenging angels. For 5 days he toured footsore and weary through the defiles, which he had already traversed on horseback. At night he flung himself down among the rocks, and snatched a few hours of sleep. But before daybreak he was always well on his way. On the 6th day, he reached the Eagle Canyon, from which they had commenced their ill-fated flight. Thence, he could look down upon the home of the sands. Worn and exhausted, he leaned upon his rifle and shook his gaunt hand fiercely at the silent whisper, widespread city beneath him. As he looked at it, he observed that there were flags in some of the principal streets and other signs of festivity. He was still speculating as to what this might mean when he heard the clatter of horses' hoofs and saw a mountain man riding towards him. As he approached, he recognized him as a Mormon named Kalpa, to whom he had rendered services at different times. He therefore accosted him when he got up to him, with the object of finding out what Lucy Ferrier's fate had been. "I am Jefferson Hope," he said. "You remember me?" The Mormon looked at him with undisguised astonishment. Indeed, it was difficult to recognize in this tattered, unkempt wanderer, with ghastly white face and fierce, wild eyes, the spruce young hunter of former days. Having, however, at last satisfied himself as to his identity, the man's surprise changed to consternation. "You are mad to come here," he cried. "It is as much as my own life is worth to be seen talking with you. There is a warrant against you from the Holy for assisting the Ferriers away." "I don't fear them, or their warrant," Hope said earnestly. "You must know something of this matter, Cowper. I conjure you by everything you told, dare to answer a few questions. We have always been friends. For God's sake, don't refuse to answer me." "What is it?" the Mormon asked uneasily. "Be quick. The very rocks have ears and the trees eyes." "What was become of Lucy Ferrier?" "She was married yesterday to young Drebber." "Hold up, man, hold up. You have no life left in you." "Don't mind me," said Hope faintly. He was white to the very lips. and had sunk down on a stone against which he had been leaning. Married, you say? Married yesterday. That's what those flags are for, on the endowment house. There were some words between young Draper and young Strangerson as to which was to have her. They both been in the party that followed them, and Stangerson had shot her father, who seemed to give him the best claim. But when they argued it out in council, Draper's party was the stronger, so the prophet gave her over to him. No one would have her very long though, for I saw death in her face yesterday. She's more like a ghost than a woman. Are you off, then? Yes, I am off, said Jefferson Hope, who had risen from his seat. His face might have been chiseled out of marble, so hard and set was its expression, while its eyes glowed with a baleful light. Where are you going? Never mind, he answered, and, slinging his weapon over his shoulder, strode off down the gorge and so away into the heart of the mountains of the haunts of the wild beasts. Amongst them, all there was none for so fierce and so dangerous as himself. The prediction of the moment was only too well fulfilled. Whether it was the terrible death of her father, or the effects of the hateful marriage into which she had been forced. Poor Lucy never held up her head again, but pinned away and died within a month. Her sottish husband, who had married her principally for the sake of John Ferrier's property, did not affect any great grief at his bereavement, but his other wives mourned over her and sat up with her the night before the burial. As is the Mormon custom, they were grouped around the bier in the early hours of the morning, when, to their inexpressible fear and astonishment, the door was flung open, and a savage-looking, weather-beaten man, in tattered garments, strode into the room. Without a glance or a word to the cowering woman, he walked up to the white silent figure which had once contained the pure soul of Lucy Ferrier. Stooping over her, he pressed his lips reverently to her cold forehead, and then, snatching up her hand, he took the wedding ring from her finger. She should not be buried in that, he cried with a fierce snarl. And before an alarm could be raised, sprang down the stairs and was gone So strange and so brief was the episode that the watchers might have found it hard to believe it themselves, or persuade other people of it, had it not been for the undeniable fact that the circlet of gold, which marked her as having been a bride, had disappeared. For some months, Jefferson Hope lingered among the mountains, leading a strange, wild life and nursing in his heart the fierce desire for vengeance which possessed him. Tales were told in the city of the weird figure which was seen prowling about the suburbs, and which haunted the lonely mountain gorges. Once a bullet whistled through Sanderson's window and flattened itself upon the wall within a foot of him.我突然一个脑雾，我忘记我念到哪里了。我只是喝了一个水而已，我忘记我念到哪里了。我刚刚最后一个是说什么？我有重复念的话，就重复念。继续。Once a bullet whistled through Stangerson's window and flattened itself upon the wall within a foot of him. On another occasion, as Trevor passed under a cliff, a great boulder crashed down on him, and he only escaped a terrible death by throwing himself upon his face. The two young Mormons were not long in discovering the reason of these attempts upon their lives, and led repeated expeditions into the mountains in the hope of capturing or killing their enemy, but always without success. Then they adopted the precaution of never going out alone or after nightfall, and of having their houses guarded. After a time, they were able to relax these measures, for nothing was either heard or seen of their opponent, and they hoped that that time had cooled his vindictiveness. Far from doing so, it had, if anything, augmented it. The hunter's mind was of a hard, unyielding nature, and the predominant idea of revenge had taken such complete possession of it that there was no room for any other emotion. He was, however, above all things, practical. He soon realized that even his iron constitution could not stand the incessant strain which he was putting upon it. Exposure and want of wholesome food were wearing him out. If he died like a dog among the mountains, what was to become of his revenge then? And yet, such a death was sure to overtake him if he persisted. He felt that that was to play his enemy's game, so he reluctantly returned to the old Nevada mines, there to recoup his health and to amass money enough to allow him to pursue his objects without privation. 很痒哎，不要弄我。Sorry. His intention had been to be absent a year at the most, but a combination of unforeseen circumstances prevented his leaving the mines for nearly 5. At the end of the time, however, his memory of his wrongs and his craving for revenge were quite as keen as on that memorable night when he had stood by John Ferrier's grave. Disguised and under an assumed name, he returned to Salt Lake City, careless what became of his own life, as long as he obtained what he knew to be justice. There he found evil tidings awaiting him. There had been a schism among the chosen people a few months before. Some of the younger members of the church having rebelled against the authority of the elders, and the result had been the secession of a certain number of the malcontents who had left Utah and become Gentiles. Among these had been Draper and Stangerson, and no one knew whither they had gone. Rumor reported that Draper had managed to convert a large part of his property into money, and that he had deported a wealthy man, while his companion, Stangerson, was comparatively poor. There was no clue at all, however, as to their whereabouts. Many a man, however vindictive, would have abandoned all thought of revenge in the face of such a difficulty. But Jefferson Hope never faltered for a moment. With the small competence he possessed, eked out by such employment as he could pick up, he traveled from town to town through the United States in quest of his enemies. Year passed into year. His black hair turned grizzled, but still he wandered on. A human bloodhound, with his mind wholly set upon the one object to which he had devoted his life. At last his perseverance was rewarded. It was but a glance of a face in a window, but that one glance told him that Cleveland in Ohio possessed the man whom he was in pursuit of. He returned to his miserable lodgings with his plan of vengeance all arranged. It chanced, however, that Drabber, looking from his window, had recognized the vagrant in the street, and had read murder in his eyes. He hurried before a justice of the peace accompanied by Stangerson, who had become his private secretary, and represented to him that they were in danger of their lives from the jealousy and hatred of an old rival. That evening, Jefferson Hope was taken into custody, and, not being able to find his authorities, was detained for some weeks. When, at last, he was liberated, it was only to find that Drabber's house was deserted, and that he and his secretary had departed for Europe. Again the avenger had been foiled, and again his concentrated hatred urged him to continue the pursuit. Funds were wanting, however, and for some time he had to return to work, saving every dollar for his approaching journey. At last, having collected enough to keep life in him, he departed for Europe and tracked his enemies from city to city, working his way in any menial capacity, but never overtaking the fugitives. When he reached St. Petersburg, they had departed for Paris, and when he followed them there, he learned that they had just set off for Copenhagen. At the Danish capital he was again a few days late, for they had journeyed on to London, where he at last succeeded in running them to earth. As to what occurred there, we cannot do better than quote the old hunter's own account, as duly recorded in Dr. Wilson's journal, to which we are already under such obligations.哦，我们终于讲完别人的故事了，要转回福尔摩斯这边了。 Chapter 6, a continuation of the reminiscence of John Watson. Our prisoner's furious resistance did not apparently indicate any ferocity in his disposition towards ourselves, for on finding himself powerless, he smiled in an affable manner and expressed his hopes that he had not hurt any of us in the scuffle. "I guess you're going to take me to the police station," he remarked. Remarked to Sherlock Holmes. "My cab's at the door. If you lose my legs, I'll walk down to it. I'm not so light to lift as I used to be." Gregson and Lestrade exchanged glances, as if they thought this proposition rather a bold one. But Holmes at once took the prisoner at his word, and loosened the towel which we had bound round his ankles. He rose and stretched his legs, as though to assure himself that they were free once more. I remember that I thought to myself, as I eyed him, that I had seldom seen a more powerfully built man, and his dark, sunburned face bore an expression of determination and energy which was as formidable as his personal strength. "If there's a vacant place for a chief of the police, I reckon you are the man for it," he said, gazing with undisguised admiration at my fellow lodger. "The way you kept on my trail was a caution." "You had better come with me," said Holmes to the two detectives. "I can't drive you," said Lestrade. "Good. And Gregson can come inside with me. You too, Doctor. You have taken an interest in the case, and may as well stick to us." I assented gladly, and we all descended together. Our prisoner made no attempt at escape, but stepped calmly into the cab which had been his, and we followed him. Lestrade mounted the box, whipped up the horse, and brought us in a very short time to our destination. We were ushered into a small chamber where a police inspector noted down our prisoner's name and the names of the men with whose murder he had been charged. The official was a white-faced, unemotional man who went through his duties in a dull, mechanical way. "The prisoner will be put before the magistrate in the course of the week," he said. "In the meantime, Mr. Jefferson Hope, have you anything that you wish to say?" "I must warn you that your words will be taken down, and maybe used against you." "I've got a good deal to say," our prisoner said slowly. "I want to tell you gentlemen all about it." 对不起，我今天录音录比较久。好，那我差不多念到这边，今天的朗读就告一段落了。ありがとうね ，Thank you so much for listening to my reading。接下来我要念那个可爱费，感谢可爱费的部分。我先去装个水，你们等我一下下。I am back. I'm sorry. 我是不是很大声？有没有人睡着了？我好想唱歌哦！我昨天歌回完之后，我去打配，然后我脑袋里面都是如果可以耶，维里安就这样卡在我的脑袋里面。然后我刚刚去拿零食的时候，我的脑袋还是如果可以。好想唱歌，别睡了，我们起来唱歌。 奇怪会这么多いらっしゃい，ありがとうね。谢谢你加入姐妹会。真的吗？唱歌吗？祝健安，谢谢。哥了吗？我可以唱一首吗？会不会吵到那个睡着的人啊？没有啊，那么晚 Apex 歌会不行。先把那个音力关掉。停用，储存。晚一点还可以降落到谁那边啊？我觉得今天我这样子好像中间断掉，可能早就已经该下的人都下过了。好，昨天就觉得说那个 YouTube 搞事，好像没有唱得很好。我可以再唱一次的话。你的声音解开了故事的谜语，落下10000年的约定。大树下的你，红色围巾，手心里碰的雨，哭了笑了，除了你还是你。我们如果有一次错过，不敢牵起你的手，我会多么寂寞，等待红线来的时候。如果可以，我想和你回到那天相遇，让时间停止那一场雨，只想拥抱你在身边的证据，闻你的呼吸，一眨眼，一瞬间，你说好就是永远不会变。大树下的你，红色围巾，手心里碰的雨，哭了笑了，除了你还是你。我们如果有一次错过，不敢牵起你的手，如果没有如果，等待红线来的时候，如果可以，我想和你回到那天相遇，让时间停止那一场雨，只想拥抱你在身边的证据，闻你的呼吸，一眨眼，一瞬间，你说好就是永远。如果可以，茫茫人海，千年一眼相遇，月光下转身，那就是你。红线划过深藏轮回的秘密，我挥霍运气，因为你才让我背对命运，不害怕靠近了，相信了，到底我们爱的有多狼狈。暴雨狂风也不想防备，爱了就爱了，只刻在我们离过的约定，花开出了花。如果可以，我想和你回到那天相遇，让时间停止那一场雨，只想拥抱你在身边的证据，闻你的呼吸，一眨眼，10000年，
留给我，别困住你。如果可以，茫茫人海，千年一眼相遇，月光下转身，那就是你。红线划过深藏轮回的秘密，我花光元气，你是我赌上世界的决定。
ありがとうございます。ありがとうございました。好了，妈妈不唱了啦，对不起啦。可是你要出去，这么不喜欢妈妈唱歌是不是？哦，是哦。那你要唱吗？你要唱吗？不要。You are so cute. You are so freaking cute. 好了，你在这边好不好？在这边。谢谢你各位，谢谢你各位，让我如此任性，让我如此任性，我很开心，谢谢。朗读台原来是唱歌吗？对哦，我这个是边唱边朗读。有没有听过那个嘻哈吗？差不多就是这样子。也想完成妹的2个月，妹的2个月，默默好可爱，ありがとうね，ありがとう。欢迎伊拉假假军团，我是叶雨，看完妹的，ありがとうね，いらっしゃい。北辰叔送出10个妹的会籍，ありがとうね。谢谢北辰叔，请拿到会籍的姐妹们，记得跟北辰叔的内讲说声ありがとうね。来 YT 欢迎这一幕都いらっしゃい，ありがとう。说了跟唱了一样好听，好有道理耶，这就是这个道理。爱撸猫成为内讲3个月，每次朗读还尾段都有惊喜福利。妈，我很抱歉，睡着的各位不要睡了，起来重睡，谢谢。还要成为猫周3个月，默默可爱，ありがとうね。我声音会太大吗？煞庆，成为猫周2个月，默默可爱，ありがとうね。如果可以选择一样永生是什么？永恒的事，我想永远待在默默的直播里。可以啊，我那个桌表直播间一直都开着啊，你可以一直在那边。6成为魔都3个月，我睡了又醒了，那你开不开心嘛？对不起啊，我越来越大声了。夜久又抖，欢迎成为魔都1个月，醒。哎呀，懂呢。我知道谁会被我吵醒，直赏会被我吵醒。阿直赏，他每次都会那个留言跟我说，他朗读台又听到一半又睡着了。唯一会被吵醒的只有他吧。拉面镇拉面堂，欢迎成为魔都いらっしゃい，ありがとうね。皆さん欢迎成为魔都いらっしゃい，ありがとう。尼克。林阿拉，欢迎做妹，いらっしゃい妹なってくれてありがとうございます。Thank you so much for becoming my younger sister 。好在我这次没睡。哦，学校午休也会听吗？那可以跟大家一起说，就是睡怎么睡，起来嗨，你就放这一段给他听，大家一起来唱歌。爱露妈成为不是啦，爱露妈上次的是，爱露妈你是到处乱踢的猫吗？是同一个人吗？如果认错的话，我就尴尬嘞。爱露妈送出了10个内幕都会加里亚的呢，谢谢爱露妈。 请拿到会姐姐妹们记得跟艾罗玛お姉ちゃん说声ありがとうね。我在吃银铃学姐送我的那个じゃがいも、じゃがポクル、ポクルって哪里？那个薯条哦，我想一下哦。小江所有一送出5个 Nemo 的会籍，请来到会籍的姐妹们记得跟小江所有给我内讲说声ありがとうね，谢谢小江所有给ありがとう。难怪那么脆。先去洗澡，拜拜。OK， 我要来一个。哦，我觉得我等一下有很多地方可以降落诶，希望我不要念太久。可是我觉得我应该会念很久，因为我有点多废话。我喜欢带你们开飞机到别人那边，我也不知道为什么，是我最近的一个兴趣。哦，史蒂华夫饼唱出了20个 Nemo 的等一下是20个吗？20个 Nemo 的会籍，ありがとうね，请拿到会籍的姐妹们记得跟史蒂华夫饼お姉ちゃん，お姉ちゃん，不是お姉ちゃん，お姉ちゃん，是ありがとうね，谢谢。海哥也有这个兴趣，不愧是姐妹。我记得我好像要从哪里呀？库夫，はいつ妹いらっしゃい、ありがとうね。我把手上盐巴舔掉。美味しかった。美味しかった。看到新闻来看才知道念默，真的吗？那新闻我也只说了3个字哎。哇塞！我为什么就不能好好的卷舌呢？笑死！没错，吃饼干就是要舔手指。OK， 让我好好的思考一下。我为什么看起来那么伤心 ？OK， 让我好好思考一下我到底感谢到哪里了？哦，这边好像都讲完了，这边都念完。OK， 应该就是现场互动那一天吧。我是谁？第二胖丁，可恶欸！谢谢史蒂华夫饼赠送的20个 Nemo 的会籍，请拿到会籍的姐妹们记得跟史蒂华夫饼お姉ちゃん说声ありがとうね。再20个ありがとうね。我还要不要念 SC？ OK， 我是不是要有一点那种等一下助眠的 feel？ 对不起，我刚唱了一首歌之后，我想唱第2首。哎，这是又20个吗？还是已经过了？哦，我刚看到哪里了？哦，小江所有给送出5个 Nemo 的会籍，请拿到会籍的姐妹们记得跟小江所有给お姉ちゃん说声ありがとうね，ありがとう，ありがとう，ありがとう。哦，大空はいつ妹いらっしゃい、ありがとうね。啊，等你们送完好。我先吃个京都念子庵。你们看我左上角，它终于好好的跳出来了。 我还有很多 SC 要念诶，我明天还要录音。OK， 我可以高速咏唱吗？你们会讨厌高速咏唱吗？其实也没有很多啦，可是我怕我废话太多而已。我有三次的要念，好，我加油。快速吗 ？JJ， 我们才刚聊到说我也很喜欢开飞机 ，JJ 也很喜欢开飞机，然后 JJ 你就开飞机到我这边了。你是刚刚有在偷听我们说话吗 ？JJ， 你是不是偷听我们说话？等一下要不要打配？如果我没有说太晚的话。ありがとうね JJ。OK， 我要来咏唱我的 SC 了。OK， 半星萌萌，你看哪个半星比较美味？我觉得你们看起来都很美味，谢谢。ありがとうね，谢谢你的可爱费。半星 again， 前排旁边的人话，对一下有人很用心的 cos 默默，真的因为你 cos 了很可爱的默默，他真的很可爱。ありがとうね，可爱费，ありがとうございます。Scott， 既然默默都开口了，谢谢你的红色 SC 啦，谢谢 Scott 的可爱费，ありがとうございます。金默，好，给默默真的 SC。ありがとうございます，谢谢你们啦！我那天说要真的 SC， 你们就给了，真的是超好笑的，谢谢啦！可愛費ありがとうございます。半星大部分板子是建奇做的，ありがとうね元気。谢谢你啊，真体。ありがとうね，可愛費ありがとう半星。伊欧卡没有留言，谢谢你的可愛費啦，伊欧卡，我知道你变成伊欧卡社死了，现在是二优卡，不是二幺卡。可愛費ありがとうございます。抹茶冲锋，我还在房间，你身体好一点了吗？抹茶冲锋，你如果现在没有留言的话，我就知道你没有在看我的台了。抹茶冲锋，我管你的，你生病也要看我的台没有啦，开玩笑的啦，祝你早日康复，赶快恢复健康，确诊真的很痛苦。ありがとうございます，可愛費ありがとうね。哦，好了，ありがとうね，ありがとう，很棒，很棒，很棒，过关，pass。禁欲台湾，欢迎成为妹3个月，默默好可愛，ありがとうございます。4不是被碾过，今天又传了一个狗狗上，前天又传了一个狗狗贴图，ありがとうございます。Scott 就 Scott， 为什么要 Scott 呢？我这不是在讲日文 ，Scott， 默默可以给现场大家一个可爱的 wink 吗？可爱的 wink， 啊哈。OK， 可愛費ありがとうございます。狗狗的耶，好可惜这次没有到现场跟默默互动，人在日本的关系，好像 FF 的时候可以跟默默互动。我产了很多血，很美哇！你产了好多血，我都没有看过下雪的時候呢，真好。狗狗的耶，ありがとうね，可愛費ありがとうございます。祝你玩的开心。哆啰啰啰噜啰啰啰啰啰啰啰，辛苦了，可愛費ありがとうね，辛苦了，ありがとう。抹茶冲锋，感谢众弟兄继承我的遗志，笑死，我也好想见默默。QQQQQQ， 抹茶冲锋，可愛費ありがとうございます。你的遗志超级好笑的啦，感谢大家带来你的遗志，谢谢。Adams Chan 没有留言，可愛費ありがとう ，Thank you for super cute。Didi Sai， 大家和喉咙辛苦了，好嗨！对，那天我真的是喉咙叫得很大声，喉咙用得很用力，就跟今天的Dear一样。谢谢大家，我相信你们的喉咙也累了好几天了。可愛費ありがとうね ，Didi Sai。In love 百鬼阿亚美初见，最近安安，可愛費ありがとうね，最近就给可愛費ありがとうございます。Hugo， 超棒的各位辛苦了，各位真的辛苦了，谢谢你们的准备了很多很用心的东西，还有你们可愛費ありがとうございます。2没有留言，可愛費ありがとうございます。TT 赛每个人都很独特，看台的当下都是那台的单推，没有错，你们看台的当下都是那台的单推，没有错，很棒，就是要这样子维持这样的精神，每一个都单推。TT 赛可愛費ありがとうございます。世界麦当劳传了一个爱心的贴图，ありがとうございます，可愛費ありがとうね。好了，接下来是昨天的歌は昨天的歌回的可爱费。抹茶冲锋传了一个玫瑰花的贴图，ありがとうございます，可愛費ありがとうね。管野，恭喜默默病愈，今天能久违听到默默天籁真好，不过请注意喉咙哦。好，谢谢你，管野，ありがとうね，可愛費ありがとう。Ganky 有点后悔昨天没让你的无奖征答变成有奖征答，现场台词或骂倒，你不用后悔，我知道你们下次一定不会放过我的，就让这次让我好过吧，谢谢。可愛費ありがとうございます。爱撸猫上次开歌会已经是去年的事情了，对啊，已经是去年的事情了呢。就像1分钟过去了之后，就有60秒过去了，概念是一样的。爱撸猫可愛費ありがとうございます。 黑背冲锋那么的头发有背景高光，好细节，好赞赞。对，因为我后面有开灯，可爱ありがとうございます。Genki 久违的歌回默默的歌声还是一样是天籁呀，竟然陶醉不下昨天的真爱 C 给默默，现在还在回高雄的高铁上，这2天真的过得好开心。虽然得一直拖着自己的行李，但我还是过得好嗨。尤其是去看动漫节的直播档回放，才知道那天原来那些图的效果绝佳呀。可惜我求婚台词想的不够多，没关系，人不要怕做梦，我会求到您点头的。www， 我爱默默哦，ありがとうね。不过还是要告诉你一个字，行，可愛ありがとうございます。加着条。成为妹1个月，默默好可爱，ありがとうございます。为你有的零牌，我这么幸福真的是可以的吗？可以的哦，大家都可以这么幸福哦，能带给你们这么幸福的一天，我也觉得很开心。为你有的零牌，可愛ありがとうございます。弟弟赛2023歌会出见好听，パチパチパチパチありがとうございます。弟弟赛可愛ありがとうございます。弟弟赛 again， 没事别急，确诊后有些人后续症状恢复很花时间，没错，就是我真的是每次录音的时候是我真的嗓子给它哑掉了，所以其实我今天晚上8点到10点半之间我是完全没有在说话的。可愛ありがとうございます。Genki 不止叔叔还有量产，哇，你们居然觉得叔叔还有量产 ，nice！ 可愛ありがとうございます。9厘米赞助买衣服，我记得9厘米好像是你的第一个 SC， 可愛ありがとうございます。谢谢你赞助我买衣服啦，谢谢。是不是被黏过经济柠檬？昨天又传了一个狗狗贴图，ありがとうございます。可愛ありがとうね。Genki 人不要怕做梦，就算你会一直要我醒醒，没错，人不要怕做梦，但是你还是要醒来哦。Genki 可愛ありがとうございます。啦啦嘛，认真的人值得掌声，谢谢你啦，谢谢你觉得我很认真，对我来说是一个莫大的赞美，真的，谢谢你。可愛ありがとうございます。跟着成为妹1个月，默默好可爱，谢谢啦，不是可爱飞啦，谢谢你成为妹1个月。Genki 默默总有一天一定能上的 first take 的，加油人不要怕做梦，就有一天默默会变我婆，你醒醒吧你。Genki 可愛ありがとうございます。Genki again 我不小心做太多，但我覺得你們金句還很多我沒做到的。好了，可以不用再做了。Genki 謝謝已經夠多了，下一次再做更多的話，我就看不到你們的臉了。可愛ありがとうございます。OK， 還有。韩吉鸡腿，明天我会寄生日礼物给年末，虽然自丑了点，但心意满满。哇，谢谢你！我很期待你们给我的卡片、生日卡片，还有生日礼物，不用太贵重，有心有到就好了，谢谢。没有礼物有卡片也很好，谢谢ありがとう。那我会在生日当天直播，然后看大家的卡片还有礼物的，谢谢。韩吉鸡腿，我没有忘掉你的留言哦，我没有忘掉你的 SCO， 我现在念咯。如果你现在不在的话呢，可以麻烦各位告诉韩吉鸡腿，我没有看到略过他的 SC 哦，韩吉鸡腿，我没有略过你的 SC 哦，可愛ありがとうね。铜牌夜神号9位的歌回听默默唱歌好开心，谢谢你啦，谢谢你，我唱的开心，你们听的開心，我真的很开心，可愛ありがとうございます。Genki 比悲伤，我是哭在婚礼那边也真的很哭。不过我真的是到最后的时候才开始泪崩的。可愛ありがとうございます。李华夫别为别人送，没事。可愛ありがとうございます。トロロロロロロロロロロ，辛苦了，可愛ありがとうございます。辛苦了不辛苦？喝个水。那我们没有留言，可愛ありがとうございます。3天我帮你妈妈唱歌，虽然不知道你说的是真的还是假的，但是我相信也是真的。可愛ありがとうね Genki， 今天就是50兰的无糖红茶拿铁，我喝的实在不习惯。刚刚在华达买了1杯半糖的，我感觉我好多了。宇宙狼人上加油 ！Oh my god， 华达的很甜呢。天哪 ，Genki 少喝一点糖吧。可愛ありがとうございます。那我妈今天我妈生日可以请念默大帝哈，我真唱了，我觉得我唱的还蛮好笑的，因为那个你妈妈。我讲的有够快，我就这样子，祝你妈妈生日快乐，祝你妈妈生日快乐，我自己觉得超好笑的啦。可愛ありがとうございます。Nico 令辛苦了，很期待下礼拜的联动。我自己也很期待这礼拜的联动，明天的就我希望我的灵验还在，我希望明天之后可以好好身心健康，不会变成像心理变态一样。OK， 可愛ありがとうございます。半星默默，1月28号 SC 就跳过不用念了。1月28号是哪一天？1月28号我好像全部都念了耶，已经来不及了。半星可愛ありがとうございます。黑背冲锋，那么今天也有背景高光，美美的。为什么你今天跟昨天说的一样的话？这样子害我想说，我这边是不是好像念 过了，但我想我应该是没有念过这边的。可爱非ありがとうございます。爱流猫今天是胖胖朗读台，不是今天是瘦瘦朗读台。谢谢你哦，可爱非ありがとうございます。抹茶冲锋还来偷丢 SC， 月亮绕着地球绕转，而有了圆满，地球绕着。又来了！我们的抹茶冲锋诗人又来了！再一次，月亮绕着地球绕转，而有了圆满，地球围着太阳自转，有了温暖。半是因为涅默而绚丽灿烂，我的世界因为有您才会如此浪漫。黎明破晓时分，我对全世界道了声早安，唯独只对您轻轻说了喜欢。如果您睡着了听不见，那我会一直说下去，直到黄昏，夜幕降临。后面没有押韵，扣分。可愛非ありがとうございます。谢谢你很用心的诗词，但我觉得后面可以再稍微的 rearrange 一下，谢谢。青龙默默好美，声音好好听，ありがとうございます，谢谢你啦！我也很喜欢朗读给你们听，虽然我觉得现在已经不助眠了，但是谢谢你啦，青龙。可愛非ありがとうございます，就从妹多2个月，默默好棒，辛苦了，ありがとうね。悠悠默默最可爱，默默晚安，早点休息，晚安哦。希望没有吵到你，悠悠。可愛非ありがとうございます。史蒂华夫并没有留言，这是水飞吗？水飞ありがとうございます。小将所以，我是初见的闹神默默，以后一定要天天支持。ありがとうね，默默今天也辛苦了，期待之后的直播，谢谢你，谢谢。我又网罗了1个半星，ありがとうね，小将所以，可愛非ありがとうございます。是不是被碾过？金鸡柠檬今天也传了一个果果贴图，ありがとうございます。枫糖メイプル就是 Maple 嘛，初见默默好可爱，初见安安晚安，希望今天朗读台没有吓到你，我又是唱歌又是高速朗诵的，对不起，但是我现在真的是我很想早点睡，因为我明天还要录音。枫糖可愛非ありがとうございますね。多喝海水，最近很冷，要注意保暖。一水一个多喝海水是什么意思呢？开玩笑的啦，这是你的名字，我知道。最近很冷，要注意保暖，你们也是哦，你们一定要注意保暖呢。我没事的，我都有开暖气，谢谢。可愛非ありがとうございます。Zo Dios， 英文可爱给你可愛非ありがとうございます，谢谢你的可愛非ありがとう呢。好的，成员都2个月完，默默辛苦了，是感谢史蒂夫赠送我这几个月会员，史蒂夫我的超人默默好可爱，ありがとう呢。Genki， 你的魔法真好用，再拿来对付你这怪物，你最好给我保重一点哈。出门的时候走在路上的时候小心一点哈。Genki， 可愛非ありがとうございます。史蒂华夫饼动漫节的绿界还没有念好的，我等下才会一起念绿界。可愛非ありがとうございます。从白夜神号没有留言，可愛非ありがとうございます。Raven Cloud， チクショ从暴击厅那边破防哭过来，又被默默唱哭了，真的很对不起。JJ 今天要爬钻石，我也要爬钻石哦。加油 ！PS 又跟可爱短刘海的生命。为什么？什么意思？什么叫又跟短刘海的生命？可愛非ありがとうございますね Raven Cloud， 你们今天有发现我也有剪刘海吗？默默今天也辛苦了，今天不辛苦，我很开心哦，我今天可以唱歌给你们听，我非常的开心。可愛非ありがとうございます，说不定我接下来还想唱一首 Genki， 我觉得下次口号啦、牌子啦、现场台词啦、现场骂倒啦，真的都可以一起来了。www 最重要的是先要合照，今天没错，我居然没有跟你们合照，可恶！不过我有跟Yuli合照，我已经很开心了，谢谢。可愛非ありがとうございます。念完了吗？今年爬钻石，我说今年呀，念完了耶！谢谢你各位的可爱费啊，叫绿界。1月28。Steve， 听说有人要 SC， 要谢谢你的 SC 啦，可愛非ありがとうございます。Carhoot 成为妹1个月，告诉永常晕烂了，真的吗？竟然可以晕了，我真的受不了你们好奇怪哦，怎么会这样子？竟然可以晕，ありがとうね。Steve 给你钱，ありがとうございます。可愛非这样说真的很不好意思。可愛非ありがとうございます。木木最可爱哦 ，Steve 跟木木最可爱，ありがとうね。可愛非ありがとうございます。Alan， 感谢Nemo唱这首歌，这首歌陪我走过很多糟糕的时候。我知道这好像是你在 Wherever You Are 还是僕は死のうと思ったのは那2首之一的时候 投的对不对 ？Alan， 感谢你的可爱，非常厉害的 Steve， 谢谢你默默的歌声了，今天的歌会真好，把你的歌能被默默唱出来，真的好感动。另外，我也想学积木蛋蛋，希望默默的接受我会员，可以把感谢词后翻到改成双倍的，请记得按赞订阅，开启小铃铛，感谢你。如果默默不想改也没关系，只是问一下，还有你最少订阅我的20个圈。OK，Steve 可爱，非常厉害的呢，谢谢你的20个会籍赠送，ありがとうございます，谢谢。Skr。许文燕、许春英猫到1个月，今天真的很开心。我本来要睡，但这样默默声音我睡不着了，很好，起来重睡没问题。ありがとうね。打到你的头了，对不起。Nicolin。成为默到1个月，抱歉刚刚听错了，默默今天要爬上钻石肯定是没问题啦，加油加油！没错没错没错，肯定是没问题的。那个莉亚亚懂呢？因为脸红什么啦？因为很奇怪，我拿着那个小说好重。小说好重，拿着1个小时、1个多小时的，身体会很僵硬，好累哦。因为那个还要对麦克风，所以姿势没有办法到很舒服，没有办法一直变换姿势，就是练奏速度。改不了，厉害的！天哪，那是要助かる了，因为成为默到3个月，厉害的呢。哦哟，这哪要什么助かる啦？这样也助かる吗？元気虽然要帮他的忙了，感谢ありがとうございます。搞不懂你们。来自绿界的史蒂夫。1月26日排江连续4天去动漫展真的很累人，但是因为我因此认识了很多人，与大家分享着欢笑与回忆。我觉得我看台追求应该要是开心这些开心的事情，而不是想要被我的推关注。虽然有被自己的推关注也是会很开心啦。动漫展能够默默现场互动真的很开心，也谢谢线上跟现场一起同乐的班心。真的，没错没错没错没错，就是要这样子开开心心的就对了，其他的真的不用想太多。可愛いありがとうございます。我真的是，我现在一直这样子很僵硬，所以一直伸懒腰可以帮助我放松。不要再助かる了啦！有什么好助かる的？然后我跟来，跟来，哼。我把我的青春给你。好想唱歌哦，可是我觉得我应该要睡觉，笑死。请问默默有考虑会员贴图那几个中文字改粗体吗？可是这样子你们以前投的都会不见嘞。应该不会改吧？我也是用黑色的主题，可是我也看得到，应该不会改吧？不然以前都不见了，我觉得好可惜哦。史蒂华夫笔墨是不倾向的改建词吗？因为你念超快，不知道你有没有看内容。另外，希望默默能感谢一下今天的80块钱赠送，也被你跳过了。我哪有跳过？我没有跳过啊。没有要改感谢词哦，ありがとうね，可愛いありがとう。我有看，谢谢你的会籍赠送，谢谢史蒂夫的80个会籍赠送，ありがとうね，请拿到会籍的姐妹们记得跟史蒂夫呢讲，说声ありがとうね，谢谢。枫糖梅普鲁，谢谢默默助かる。 客气。可别ありがとうございます。使用华夫饼又送出了10个内蒙的会籍，请拿到会籍的姐妹们记得跟史蒂华夫饼说声ありがとうね，谢谢，いらっしゃい。我想唱歌，可是我怕我唱不好。经过我的高速咏唱之后，这么快吗？好，唱一下这个好了。最后一首，这个应该不会太吵。我不是不能没有你，忘记关 BGM 了。再一次。我不是不能没有你，只是喜欢有你。如果有天你离我而去，我不会没了自己。曾为你活过的生命，与你共存才有意义，所以不要浪费我的真心，因为那是最纯粹的感情。我把我的青春给你，不是因为想换取和你的婚礼，而是单纯在最美好的年华遇见了你，必须爱你。我把我的青春给你，不是因为想换取衷心的美丽，而是单纯在最美好的年华遇见了你，必须爱你。曾为你活过的生命，与你共存才有意义，所以不要浪费我的真心，因为那是最纯粹的感情。我把我的青春给你，不是因为想换取和你的婚礼，而是单纯在最美好的年华遇见了你，必须爱你。我把我的青春给你，不是因为想换取衷心的美丽，而是单纯在最美好的年华遇见了你，必须爱你。这是一场没有未来的爱
一场没有未来的爱情，不纯洁也不唯一的爱情。
好了，妈妈真的不唱了啦，妈妈这次真的不唱了，好不好？对不起啦。蓝兄，ありがとう。ありがとうね、チェー Thank you for super chat。ありがとうございました。super Q， Q とありがとうございます。谢谢你的可爱肺。那颗令这首好适合默默，感谢主委加码，我把我的 SC 给你，必须爱你。可愛肺ありがとうございます。那颗令ありがとうね，谢谢你的可爱肺。黎明清晨一梦到1个月，ありがとう。星火星辰一梦到2个月，好美的歌声给默默3位。可愛肺ありがとうございます。铜牌夜神好好听，ありがとうございます，谢谢啦，谢谢你们让我在这个大半夜的时候可以尽情的唱歌。可愛肺ありがとうございます。史蒂华夫饼，然后默默跳过10个汇集了。不是，我刚刚在唱歌嘛。可愛肺ありがとうね，谢谢你送出的20个汇集，ありがとう。黎明清超级好听，超级感谢，谢谢你的可爱肺黎明清，可愛肺ありがとうございます。我在 Security 那边看到你哦。可愛肺ありがとうね。S 会成一模到3个月么，可愛ありがとうございます。史蒂华夫饼送出了 Nemo 的20个汇集，请拿到汇集的姐妹们记得跟史蒂华夫饼说声ありがとうね，谢谢。星空成一模到2个月，ありがとうね，默默好棒，ありがとうございます。史蒂华夫饼又送出了40个 Nemo 的汇集，可愛肺ありがとうございます。不是可愛，不。等一下，妈妈已经念到已经不知道自己在念什么了。你要吃饭对不对？不是可爱肺。谢谢汇集40个。请拿到汇集的姐妹们记得跟史蒂华夫饼说声ありがとうね，谢谢。Genki， 太好听了，这么可爱，唱歌又好听，默默怎么能不晕呢？马上来，我帮你打醒，可愛肺ありがとうございます。善哉，噩梦，我要睡觉了，谢谢大家，洛克晚安。OK， 晚安。史蒂华夫饼还有20个，谢谢史蒂华夫饼赠送的所有 Nemo 的汇集，请拿到 Nemo 汇集的所有的姐妹们，记得跟史蒂华夫饼说声ありがとうございますね，不是可愛肺啦，谢谢。OK， 晚安，今天要跟大家说拜拜了，我知道今天一点都不助眠啦，不过没有关系，我们可以起来重睡的，我相信大家都可以办到这件事情的，没有关系。那我们明天 Devour 见喽，谢谢，拜拜。等一下，你们要先不要走，我要降落。我忘记了，我要降落啦，拜拜。